ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Da 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 da!
You sound insane. You realize that? Yeah. If the whole world gone crazy!
Are you serious? Ladies and germs!
Yeah. It's showtime.
That's fun.
We're continuing our Oscar conversation here on Mad About Movies with arguably one of the most anticipated movies of the year, one of the most successful movies of the year critically, and it's already picked up the Best Picture win for Golden Globe drama movie, and it's nominated for Best Picture. So, wouldn't not be a year of Mad About Movies if we didn't hit every Best Picture nominee that we possibly could. So here we are. Batman Shane is in the house, the Hollywood Insider. He has attended a screening with Roger Deakins and Sam Mendes, and he's going to share a ton of insight about what they had to say about the making of this movie, and I'm excited for that. We're also joined by co-host Brian. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
What's up, man? This has been a weird one. We were supposed to record this on Monday, and then Richard had a thing, and so we pushed it to Tuesday. And then Tuesday, I came home from work. I run, if you don't know, I run youth sports, and I yell all day because kids need to be yelled at. And I came home and was like, guys, I'm dying. I can't talk. My throat is killing me. And so we pushed it to Wednesday. And I was like, I'm just not going to be there. I need to take a couple days to not
You invested
talk.
in a megaphone, Brian?
No. I have a very loud coach voice, but it also haunts me after. It's my blessing and curse.
Brian, you should get one of those old school ones that like Cecil B. DeMille used to use in the 30s.
Yeah.
They're like 4 feet long.
Yeah, and I'll talk in that voice too. Yeah.
Sit in a director's chair. Too.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the pictures as well.
Get down, kids. Let's go watch a picture.
So then I was like, okay, I'm out. And then 30 minutes ago, I was like, you know what, guys, I'm fine. I'm in. Let's do this. So we got Shane to come in for me, and then I was like, no, okay, it's fine. I'll do it. And then Richard was like, oh, thank God, I'm feeling terrible, so I'm out now too.
Yeah. So Richard's under the weather. So y'all don't come over to my place.
Yeah, we'll stay
it's a
away.
good thing we didn't
stay away from me.
We didn't hang out last weekend. But yeah. So in delaying it, Shane was able to join us, and it's all the better.
I think Sam Mendes owes me a huge thank you for this, because the last time I was on the show, the movie in question inexplicably got 11 Oscar nominations. Right. So I think that the movie that we're talking about today, I think it's a surefire lock for Best Picture now that I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you might know Batman Shane from our previous Batman-related episodes, but he's also been a frequent guest and contributor to the show, and also is a vocal member of our Discord channel for our VIPs. So if you're not a VIP and you want to get on that Discord, continue the conversation off the air, it's been a great time over there, and it's continuing as we speak as my phone is lighting up. So, good times, madaboutmoviespodcast.com/VIP for those people. We just dropped our AMA, just dropped our Kindergarten Cop episode. We got Shutter Island coming up on that feed. So, good times happening always in the VIP Bar Lounge Grill. And so, it is time to talk 1917. Man, I have been anticipating this for so long. It was almost on my movie draft list, but since it got pushed to January, I didn't risk basically 2 weeks of box office. And it was what I would have had before we would have had to pull the plug on the movie draft. And so didn't end up happening. But yeah, this was one that I had circled, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago when I saw what Roger Deakins was up to. And very anticipated for, more than just like about being World War I. I think, a movie about World War I would intrigue me greatly. In fact, I don't know if you guys have seen, but the Peter Jackson documentary, Shane, I'm sure you've seen it. They Shall Not Grow Old.
Yes, I have. Yes, indeed. It's absolutely excellent. But if you have not seen it, it's worth the watch for sure.
Worth the watch. It's not necessarily a typical documentary. Peter Jackson did an incredible thing in going back and getting this footage from World War I, completely restored it, adjusted the frame rate of it so that it looks like actual movie footage, 24 frames per second, and he, because when you watch a film from from a long time ago, it was like this frame rate was so low that it like everyone's like running around essentially, like everyone's like fast motion. So yeah, he adjusted it to 24 and colorized it in parts, and also hired lip readers to go in and look at what people were saying and voiced things. So it's like there's sound, there's it's actually incredible. It looks like a film, but it's a documentary, and it's all voiced by the actual voices of the war, which is definitely only adds to it. So definitely would recommend that. So the subject matter intrigues me a lot. And then you add Roger Deakins on top of that, and you add Sam Mendes, his collaborator for Skyfall, on top of that, and a director that we are fans of on the show. And this one piqued my interest quite a bit. So needless to say, I was excited for 1917. But the question is, did it live up to the expectations? And I'll say technically, man, this was a technical marvel, technical masterpiece, if you will. From a filmmaking standpoint, and we talked about Parasite earlier this week, and that episode will drop tomorrow, by the way, on the main feed, about the technical achievement of Parasite. And I think this is on that level. This is one of the best films I've ever seen in terms of how it looks and how it's shot, the overall experience with the score and with all the visuals combined. It's certainly an epic, and I don't think anyone can disagree with that who's seen the film. But it's surprising to see it nominated for Best Original Screenplay, because the screenplay is kind of minimal in it, and it's at the same time it does set the atmosphere quite well. But I still think, and this might be a hot take on this, because I think this movie was great, and I'm going to grade it out very highly, and it's going to be on my list perhaps at the end of the year for my top 10. But I still think that the definitive World War I movie has not been made yet. And this is a great movie. It's a very isolated experience. But I just think World War I is such an untapped territory cinematically that somebody's going to go in and make the definitive movie about that war. How many World War II movies were made before Saving Private Ryan, and that again is an isolated incident, but it really did kind of capture the essence of that war and all its horrible violence, right? And so this more felt like an adventure film, in parts than it did a war movie. I didn't really get the war is hell vibe near as much as I did or expected to get with this. I think they shy away from that for spectacle for some reasons. But at the same time, man, I can't say enough good things about what a cinematic experience this is that everybody should probably go and see. So passing it off to Brian, and then we'll Shane, prepare your thoughts and observations on the panel from Roger Deakins and the director. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. A lot of great stuff. I echo what you said there, Kent. It's I was excited for this. You're spot on. We don't do World War I movies very often at all. It's been a very long time, except for Peter Jackson's doc last year. As far as narrative features and whatnot, haven't done it in a long time. And you think about great ones, and it's like, well, Lawrence of Arabia, but that almost doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a war movie in the traditional sense of what we think of when we think of war movies, I think. And then you have
it kind of feels like it transcends the genre.
That one is
a little different.
That one is different. I think Paths of Glory might be the
Paths of Glory,
definitive World War I movie.
Totally. I totally agree. But I would also hazard to guess that the majority of our audience has probably never seen Paths of Glory. It doesn't have. I don't mean that as a knock on, our audience at all. Yeah. I just it gets swallowed up in,
which is a shame.
Yeah, but look, it gets swallowed up in Kubrick's own filmography, and then also it was made in. I'm looking at I had it
mid-50s, I think.
Yeah, it was
mid to late 50s.
Gosh, I had it right here in front of me. And
55,
57.
maybe?
Well,
57.
57, yeah.
I mean,
and here's the thing. That's the other thing, Brian, is I would say that if you were to ask a majority of even film fans, I would wager a guess that a lot of them don't actually know that that's a Stanley Kubrick film.
probably so. Yeah.
Right? Because it's so famous for being a war movie, and it has Kirk Douglas in it.
Right.
And all these things that people kind of forget, like, oh, yeah, and by the way, it was directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Sure. Yeah, no,
it just
I
almost
think
feels like an
that's-
afterthought.
I think that's spot on.
And like a
it-
20-year-old Stanley Kubrick, too.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
super fresh. Like, hadn't really established himself at all.
Yeah,
either.
absolutely. So you have that, and then it seems like World War II movies are a genre, Korean War movies are a genre, Vietnam movies are a genre, and World War I movies kind of aren't, and it just kind of is this lost era of history, and then by proxy, sort of is a lost era in film, I think, and so. But I was very excited about this. The Deakins feature was really cool and really gave you a great look at, like, holy cow, like, we're seeing some stuff with this, right? And the way it was done. Sam Mendes is interesting for me because it's like, I go through his filmography. He doesn't have a whole lot of credits. And I hate American Beauty, and I love Road to Perdition, and I hate Jarhead. And I'll tolerate Revolutionary Road, and I think Away We Go is really good and kind of forgotten. And Skyfall is so great, and Spectre is so not great, and so it's just he's kind of all over the place. But he also tackles interesting. He doesn't stay in the same. He doesn't stay in the same genre. He doesn't just stay in the same common ground that he's used to or familiar territory, where he kind of goes all over the place, and I love that about him. So I was very excited about this. I got together with my dad and my brother and my brother-in-law. We went to see it together over the weekend. When it finally was here, I hate, limited release, not being able to see it for a couple of weeks was very frustrating, but went to see it. And it is very, very much a movie that you have to, I think sometimes we get crap when I say this, but I'm going to say, because this is one that I think it really qualifies for. Like, it's so awesome that we all have big TVs in our house and we have a TV in our pockets at all times and all that sort of, like, it's so cool that you can just pull out your phone and watch pretty much whatever movie you want at any given time. Please go see this in a theater. Like, I think you are missing something by not seeing this in a theater. And in 3 months, if you watch it on your phone or on a DVD or something like that, I do think it's going to lose some of its grandness.
You're saying I shouldn't have watched it on my Apple Watch, Brian? Because that's how I experienced 1917.
Martin Scorsese just had a stroke when you said that. He just keeled over.
Why are you watching pictures on a watch?
Yeah, I watched mine on a Zune.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah. So look, it's a grand spectacle. This is the easiest walk to the podium I have ever seen in my entire life for cinematography. Like, if this doesn't win, we should stop having awards. It's just such an impressive feat from a cinematography standpoint, and all that. I don't know yet, and I won't be able to figure that out until we have some distance from it. I don't know how it's going to hold up as far as not its quality, but like, am I going to remember this as a great movie, or am I going to remember it as a great experience and a great spectacle? And either of those are great. I'm not, it's not a knock on the movie if it turns out that 3 years down the line, I really only think of this as like this great theater experience more so than a great movie. But that does, in a year like this that has been so great, and we've seen so many good movies over the last 3 or 4 months, that when I'm looking at my top 10 and top 12 and trying to figure out who, what movie slides into what and what deserves Best Picture and all that sort of stuff, it's an interesting, it's like a little caveat or an asterisk almost that I have to put on myself and put on the movie of like, I'm not sure, because it's so much more about the way it's shot and the way it's put together and all that stuff. And I wonder how well that will hold up over, the next 3 or 5 years. But that's not Sam Mendes' job. I should just to be clear, like, that's his job, is to make a great movie and to do the experience that he wants to make and make the movie that he wants to make. And he did that so well. It's a really incredibly crafted film. I don't know what its legacy is going to be, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, it does, just to echo you, it does feel like a a shoe-in for Best Picture if there ever was one.
At least cinematography. I mean, I don't know if it's going to win Best Picture. This is a great year, but cinematography, this is a walk to the podium, I think. So.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Shane, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I agree with you, Brian. I think that there is kind of the concern there that is this movie going to ultimately end up as just kind of a great theatrical experience, or is it going to just hold the test of time as a great movie? But I've actually seen it twice now, and I can definitely say that it is going to be one of those movies that if you happen to catch some of it like on TV or you're flipping through HBO or whatever, it is going to be one of those movies that you are going to sit there and you're going to finish because you just get sucked into the story so quickly.
Yeah.
That it just has such a nice momentum to it that I don't know. I think for me, well, we'll get into that in grades and stuff, but yeah, on a general level, I mean, I will say that, I think the highest praise that I can give this movie is that for people like us who we love movies and we watch movies on a fairly regular basis. And then for those of us who also geek out even a level further and we watch behind the scenes features and we do all stuff like that, it is a rare thing when we see a visual effect or we see something done that we don't know how it was accomplished. And this movie had multiple moments throughout it that I thought to myself, my God, how did they do that? And it was this real magic movie moment I should say the magic of the movies was, it completely fooled me and I had no idea how they did these things. And so it was a real treat to see a movie like this that kind of, kept that magic of movies alive that I wasn't able to see behind the curtain for so much of it.
Totally agree. Genuinely, that's a great point, and that's something that goes in its column, right? That's a point in its favor because I'm fully with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, Ken, I think you're right, because even though this movie, I think this movie is pretty incredible, I do think you're right that there's got to be a movie that's a little bit more, that's going to be more of the definitive World War I story.
It feels like a movie is going to come out that's a little more sweeping in its scope. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
There's so much that happened in the war and maybe to be told from more than one perspective, would be something that I'd like to see too,
Yeah, and one of the most interesting things about World War I, that this is not for me, actually Sam Mendes said this, but he had mentioned that World War I was the only world war that started on horseback and it ended with tanks and planes.
Yep. Yes.
Like modern warfare was revolutionized in the middle of this war for this war, and it's just crazy how the start of the war looked nothing like the end of the war.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of that here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like Paths of Glory is great, but it's even though it's a little bit wider in its scope, and this movie is a lot more singular in its scope, there's got to be a movie, maybe All Quiet on the Western Front, but again, there's got to be a movie that kind of does like a much larger kind of worldview of World War I to kind of just give you the technological aspects of the war, which are kind of one of the most important historical facts of this war.
Yeah,
but
100%. While you're on that topic, the thing the documentary was talking about is the fact that most of these soldiers, nobody in World War II, they had the benefit of like all these generals that fought in World War I, like all came back, or all were still in the service. World War I, for almost every army, nobody knew what the heck they were doing because they were all new soldiers, and like these kids came and like, oh, my buddy's from high school, is going in. Let's go. Let's do this. And nobody knew what they were getting themselves into. And I really do think that this movie captures that well. The young kids and people running into each other in places and nobody really knowing where this was all going, and it feels like a bunch of average people out on a battlefield. And that's scary in its own right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I can certainly start talking about the panel.
Touch on the panel. Let's. I guess we can't really spoil this movie. There's one big spoiler, but talk about the panel and keep it spoilery.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Kent mentioned, I was lucky enough. I got to see this movie fairly early. I got to see it right before Thanksgiving, and I got to watch it. And it was a Producers Guild panel, and afterwards, Sam Mendes was there, Roger Deakins was there, the producer was there, the screenwriter was there, and then the two leads of the film were there. So it was pretty neat. They actually had said that when we saw the film, they had just finished it 8 days ago, and we were some of the first people, like first general public people, to actually see the film. Oh, so that was kind of a treat to just see it that early, pretty much. But yeah, it was interesting.
Was it an industry panel? Industry screening, Shane, like you and industry people, or was it there were any fans there or anything like that?
No, it was a Producers Guild screening.
Okay, gotcha.
So members of the PGA were invited, and then members of the PGA can also bring one guest. Although I sat next to a couple of tweens that were in like taped off seats, and clearly they were some like producers' kids. And at one point, like one of the girls was like, "Ugh, God, this movie's British." It was like, "Oh my God, kids are the worst." Like, anyways,
I said the same thing though. In defense.
British, ugh.
British, ugh. But Sam Mendes, they came out after the movie was over, and Sam Mendes kind of started talking about how after Spectre, he was waiting for a script to hit his desk that he wanted to direct, and he said like a year went by and nothing really hit that he was really interested in, and so one of his producers said, "Why don't you start writing that World War I script that you've been talking about?" Because the movie was based off of some of the stories that his grandfather had actually told him that he did in World War I. So he pulled one of the writers that he liked from the TV show Penny Dreadful off the show, or on the side of the show, and they co-wrote the script together. And so he was a little bit nervous about writing the movie himself. That's why he brought in a co-writer. So, but he was pretty pumped about the final result. And when he gave the script to the producers, they were like, "Oh, this is great. We're going to make this." So he got tired of waiting and he wanted to make his own movie. So I thought that was kind of interesting because he'd never written a script before, or at least gotten credit for doing any writing on a screenplay.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So what did Roger Deakins talk about this? And I'm sure a lot of the focus was on him in the panel.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, Roger Deakins is quite literally a living legend. So when he walked in,
he's the GOAT. He's the GOAT.
He got this huge round of applause. I mean, he was talking about, he mentioned that when Sam Mendes sent him over the script, on page 1 or 2 of the script, it said that that Sam wanted to shoot it as like a all-in-one shot type deal, and Roger Deakins said that he literally rolled his eyes and went like, "Oh God, this is so dumb. Everybody wants to do one shot." But he read this script, awesome. And he said he rolled his eyes. And
how many times a day do you think he takes a meeting where somebody says that to him? Like, okay.
Oh, yeah,
probably,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Something dumb or, whatever. Yeah. And he's like, all right.
Yeah.
But he said when he finished reading the script, he was like, I completely understood why Sam wanted to shoot it as one shot. And he said, and by the end of the script, I agreed that was going to be the best way to do it. So he signed on to the project pretty easily. He had mentioned that he's at this stage in his career, he doesn't really care about budget because he's done little small movies, right? And he's done big movies like Blade Runner. And he also doesn't care about stars, like who's in it or whatever. He just only accepts projects now that he either really likes the script or he thinks that the cinematography is going to provide him with a unique challenge. And he said that with this film, it literally covered both categories. So he was like, it didn't take me long to decide that I wanted to shoot this movie. And then it just became about the challenge of trying to figure it out. And so he and Sam Mendes worked for months. I mean, the prep work on this movie was much longer.
6 months of rehearsal just with the actors. Just walking it all out, walking the paths while they were doing the lines so they knew exactly where they would be at saying what, where they were facing, all that stuff.
Yeah, one of the questions that the actors were asked is that if they remembered all the lines from the movie. And they said that they didn't remember all the lines from the movie, but they said that they could start, they could walk the whole movie from scratch, right? Start here at the tree, get up 20 paces, turn left, go into the bunker. Yeah. And they actually got out of their seat and they walked the first 5 steps of it and everybody kind of laughed.
That's hilarious.
But they did say that they could actually get up and they could walk the entire movie at the from memory. So that was pretty impressive. Now, speaking of which, let's save that note until we get into spoiler territory. But there was something else interesting that the actors said, but we'll talk about that when we get into spoilers.
Okay, great. Yeah. Insider released a great video that I shared on our Discord, and I'll put the link in the notes of this episode on iTunes if you want to check that out, about how the one-shot technique was pulled off with Roger Deakins. And It is so impressive, the technology that went behind this. So they go from basically two guys carrying a Steadicam on like a plank, basically. It's like mounted to a plank. And then they'll walk a certain distance and they'll like set the plank on a truck and the truck will start driving. And then the truck will stop and two more guys that are dressed in fatigues, so you don't notice them, will come grab it and carry it a little bit longer, like through the, because they several times in the movie they go from like on land, now then they go down into the trenches, and now you're in a bunker, now you're out of the bunker, now you're in the trench again, now you're out of the trench, and they're running, several shots like that in the movie. But the seamless ability for them to do it without doing like there are cuts in the movie. I think they said there's 40 different shots that are stitched together. And you can kind of tell where those are. And when they go in a door, when a big object passes through, like when he jumps in the water, when it fades to black, several of those times. But I'm talking about like the actual, like one of those 40 shots, the seamless ability for them to change the terrain on the fly is amazing. Like to not notice somebody picking up the camera and setting it on a crane, and the crane to do a movement, and then to go back down and somebody to take it off the crane and keep walking without any kind of camera jitter or any kind of noticeable effect is that's as remarkable as the fact that they did this all in one take is how they did it in one take.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw some videos or whatever of the camera essentially being like lifted onto zip lines and stuff. People like grabbing it off the zip line. The one thing I'm still not entirely sure how they pulled off was the shot where the sequence where he actually gets into the truck. One of the guys gets into the truck. The camera actually goes behind the truck and like. But how does it do that? Because there's a wall there, and then the truck starts moving. So was there a camera guy like hanging outside of the truck while it was driving?
I think so. Yeah, I think they talk about that in the video. Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's crazy to me. But it's awesome that they did it.
Something else that they did, because every detail of this thing was planned out, is they built miniatures of every set that they were going to do. Every little town that they built. The little townhouse where the plane crashes, all that. They built it in miniature. And so the one long set for the flare sequence, they built it out, and they actually, the flares were actually real flares that they shot off. And so that entire sequence is lit by flare, no lights, nothing. It's all natural light, fire, things like that. So how they rehearsed that is they actually put the flares on wires so that they could consistently shoot them in the same areas for multiple takes. But they actually built mini versions of the wires over the mini set and like had little miniature lights on them that shot off so that they could see exactly how the shadows were going to fall onto the set as they were doing. It's unbelievable, but you have to see it in the video. They show the actual set, the miniature, how they did it. But that absolutely blew my mind, that they were able to time out the shadows in the scene to know where, okay, you're going to go here, you're going to fall, you need to be in light, right? So to know where that light is going to be, it was a huge challenge for them, And
to back up Brian's point, with all due respect to every other person who was nominated this year, good work. I mean, really well done. You should feel proud of yourself.
Absolutely.
But don't bother showing up. No. Just stay home in your pajamas. Make it easy on yourself. Just heat up a big bucket of popcorn. Just stay home. You're not gonna. It's Roger's year again. So, thanks for playing.
Yeah, I used to. I mean, I'm a big Deakins guy, and I've thought that the train sequence in Jesse James was like his definitive moment. Like where he really burst onto the scene as a cinematographer.
Yeah,
that's all lit by train light, and then that shot of like all the guys in the woods as the train's passing with all the shadows passing over them and stuff. It's just unbelievable. But his ability to use natural light, I think that's really where Roger Deakins sets himself apart from other cinematographers. He can pick a lens and pick the right camera and the right light.
Yeah.
And if you ever go out at night, just try to imagine, okay, now you have to shoot a movie in this. Like, the task is unbelievable, and his ability to do that is amazing. Emmanuel Lubezki, who shot Birdman and did that all in one take and did The Revenant, is on that same level. The Revenant was all shot with natural light. And that was, I think, the first time we talked about on the podcast that had been done to that level. And I was just absolutely astounded that you could do that, that you could shoot a movie using just natural light with no sets, no lights on the camera, nothing, That's very hard. It's not easy to do. And I think Roger Deakins took that concept. Oh, I see your natural light use and your one shot. Now watch this. He like one up to Emmanuel Lubezki with this film big time. It's like a competition.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially when you think about how big this kind of scale of this movie was, in the sense that the camera went so many places that where would you hide the lights? There was nowhere to hide any lights or flags or anything like that you could do in The Revenant, because The Revenant was shot pretty close up for most of it. This movie was shot on very wide lenses to where you could see most of the terrain the whole time. There was nowhere to hide, you know? So Roger was talking about, I should say Mr. Deakins, but he was talking about how so much of this movie, it was just like, yeah, we planned it out to the T, but most of my job after we got set up was just praying that we got 5-10 minutes of good light throughout the day that we could just shoot it, That's
another thing. Just shooting off multiple days and then having to make it seem like it's all happening in a 1 or 2 hour period and match the light in the sky is insane. Steven Spielberg talked about that when he shot Jaws, that they'd go shoot one day and then they'd go out the next day to shoot and be like, oh, the sky's gray. All right, we won't shoot today, because they needed blue skies. Like it's an immense challenge to be outdoors. Let's just, if I haven't already emphasized that. But.
And trust me, there's no amount of color correction you can do in post that is going to fix, mismatching time periods during the day, because everything is wrong. The shadows are wrong, the light's wrong. It's a whole mess. So yeah, shooting a movie like this is incredibly difficult, and it's incredibly ambitious in scale. Yeah, just to try to do it. The
undertaking of the movie just by itself is very, very difficult. And then you add, oh, by the way, we're going to make it look like it's one. In some ways, I'm glad that I'm going to call him Raj, Shane, since you called him Mr. Deakins. I'm going to go the opposite route and call him Raj. No, you see something like this. While I was watching it, I kind of giggled to myself at one point because I just had this image of Roger Deakins being like, well, I'm the best of all time, and I'm bored, and so I'm going to just try to make things hard on myself, like try to do things that no one else has ever done and just make it play that direction just to give myself a challenge, That's how it seems. And then to not make it be a gimmick, right? Like both he and Mendes together to make it feel like this is a reasonable thing to do, not just a, hey, look at the cool thing we can do with the cameras, And that's incredibly impressive.
I mean, it is a gimmick, but gimmick isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, I think we've talked about this before, maybe off the air, but like, I disagree with you guys. I did not like the movie Boyhood, and I thought that if you remove the gimmick of that movie, which is that it was the same actor shot over 12 years or whatever, I thought you had a pretty straightforward and frankly pretty uninteresting movie on your hands. So the movie kind of was crushed under the weight of the gimmick there. But this movie, I feel like the gimmick not only worked, but it was the only appropriate way to shoot it, right? It enhanced the movie, a significant amount. Sam Mendes talked about in the panel that why he wanted to shoot it this way was because he felt like the word he kept using over and over was that shooting it with the one shot style would kind of have this sense of gravity, right? That either, the camera was being pulled along with the two soldiers, or at certain points during the movie, the camera itself was pulling the two soldiers along. And it just gave it this kind of immediacy and this momentum. I mean, it works so well because so many of those shots, when they're turning the corner, you're turning the corner with them. And it's not scary like a horror film, but it is kind of that kind of thrilling, not knowing what's around that corner, and you're kind of scared with them. So I think that to shoot it one shot was definitely gimmicky, but I think it absolutely worked, and it absolutely enhanced the story and the way this movie was told.
It doesn't rely on that. I mean, this movie is literally a Roger Deakins sizzle reel. I mean, let's be honest, Right. But it's got a story to boot that works. That actor that they got, what's his name? The main actor, he was great. I guess we're in spoilers now. I mean, if you haven't seen 1917, we're going into spoilers now. So there's only one real spoiler. is that his compadre dies on him.
Pretty early on, too.
Pretty
I
early
want to say like 30, 40 minutes into the film.
I didn't see that coming. That was a surprise to me. Just based on we see 5 billion movies a year, you know, you kind of you recognize the beats pretty early of like how this, like one of these two may die, but it's going to be second act going into the third act, if not late in the third act itself, and to have it.
Well, and also on that note, shout out to all of the trailer editors and all the people who worked on the behind the scenes features, because watching them, you had no idea that both of them don't make it till the end of the movie. So that was a real shocking moment when that happens, when he dies, because you at least me, I did not see it coming, at least not at that moment, you know.
We got plenty more to talk about with 1917, but before we do that, I want to tell our listeners about Likewise. If you're not on Likewise, you need to get on it. Likewise is an amazing new website that Taylor's recommends just for you. We get a lot of questions in our Discord. We get a lot of questions in email about what people should be watching, what we're currently watching. So what if there was like a weekly recommends app? You can find tailored recommends at Likewise. What you do is you enter in the things you've watched. You get tailored recommendations just for you, like the things that you like. Likewise is the only app you need to discover what to watch or read next. In fact, Likewise learns from what you like to make better recommendations. If you ever wondered what's coming up on Hulu, what's coming up on Netflix, well, Likewise sends me an email every week that tells me what's new on Netflix that week. I don't have to sift through all their menus and all their scrolling marquees. Likewise brings it all there for you. In fact, you can recommend our podcast on Likewise to other people, and that helps grow the show. Honestly, with music streaming services, with all the books people are reading nowadays, it's just hard to sift through all those recommended playlists, recommended books. This puts it all in one place, and it could not be easier. Likewise is incredible. I've been using it for a while, so check it out. Go to likewise.com/mad. Download the app. Enjoy Likewise, and follow us on there. Get Tailored Recommends. Boom. So, more 1917, guys. Oh, let's talk about some standout scenes in the movie. The first one for me is the barbed wire, where he gets his hand caught in barbed wire. That was crazy.
Yeah. And then immediately dips it into like a dead body accidentally.
Right. Yeah, he falls into it was a dead horse, wasn't it, or something? Or a dead body. Yeah, you're right, dead body. So yeah, right before that, when they're in the trench and they're like, all right, they're asking where they need to go, and the soldier's like, all right, you gotta cross no man's land. And they're like, oh God, And it's so funny because the image we have of no man's land up to this point is Wonder Woman like coming out of the trench, like taking like tank fire to her shield and like doing all this stuff, or whatever.
Yeah, and Warhorse.
This was like the complete opposite.
A
Warhorse.
Yeah,
this is like the complete opposite of that, where you just expect something, and I think Sam Mendes played off that anticipation well. Mm-hmm. That it's like very tense, and it's not all out warfare, which is probably more like it was. But really, it's tough for these guys to make a movie this accurate to the time or what it was really like, because literally there are no survivors alive from World War I. There's not one person that they can go to and say, yo, was it like this?
Yeah.
It wasn't? Okay. All right, we'll do it, Mm-hmm. Whereas World War II, there's, hundreds, thousands of veterans still around. And it's a different thing, the history books didn't really record this one, as nearly as in detailed as the other ones, so it is more of a challenge. But yeah, I didn't expect No Man's Land to be like essentially them walking through dead horses and stuff like that. I thought it would be like, that would be the pinnacle action sequence of the film would be that. And it wasn't, so that was cool.
And from a guy who uses hand sanitizer about 12 times a day, that barbed wire sequence was just horrifying to watch.
Oh yeah, that was tough. I wonder how they did that. It must have been CG. Like, how did they? Some fake hand he was wearing or something. I don't know how they filmed that.
Maybe he DiCaprio'd it. Just cut his hand.
He just went for it. Like, you're gonna have to do it. It's like, all right, we're going for the Oscar. So they get into the bunker there, and then they have the rat sequence, and that one's amazing. Watching Deakins shoot that, where they're walking through and all these empty bunk beds and all that stuff. Gosh, it looks great. And yeah, so they see the rats, and then they notice the tripwire, and I jumped out of my chair when the tripwire thing hit. I mean, it absolutely caught me off guard, like scared me to death, And so that moment really worked for me. How did that play in the theater, Shane, for you at the screening?
I mean, it was huge. I mean, nobody saw it coming because they see the tripwire, so you think to yourself, "Oh, we're totally fine here. They're going to just step over it," and then that rat falls, and it just before you can even process what happened, it just blows up. And of course, to Brian's point, that's why you got to see a movie like this in the theater because as good of a sound system as you might have at home, it's better in a theater, and it was so loud in a good way that it shook you to your core, where you're like, "Whoa, these guys are they're in trouble, or they might be dead. Who knows?" But you're absolutely right, Ken. That sequence, the suspense in that sequence and the payoff of it was just incredible. It was so well done. Yeah.
I don't know how they got the kid's face to change colors when he dies, too. Like, he goes completely pale white.
Yeah, he did.
That blew my mind.
My guess that was probably a little CG. Yeah. Little CG trickery there.
That was amazing.
But that whole sequence, too, with when they get to the house and when the plane crashes or whatever, that was incredible. And that was the scene I mentioned earlier that I would get into it when we were in spoilers. The actors only rehearsed the death scene once. And they recorded it, the actual rehearsal, and Sam Mendes loved it so much that he told them, do not rehearse this scene again until we shoot it, because it was they nailed it on the rehearsal, and he didn't want them to lose that kind of energy. So Sam Mendes had filmed it, and he kind of got the mechanics of the blocking down, and then he told them exactly how to do it on set. But they literally only rehearsed that death once, and then they did it on set on the day. And that's why that was so kind of powerful and fresh, because they hadn't rehearsed that scene to death. No pun intended.
Nice. Nice. It had two really somber moments that I don't know if I could have done without, but I don't know. It felt like it was kind of emotional. It was kind of an emotional moment that, I don't know, a lot of war movies don't have. One was when he goes into the house with the baby and all that. And the other one is where he walks through the woods, and that one soldier is singing the song, the lullaby song and stuff. That really kind of kills the momentum, so to speak. But I can see how a movie like this can just be unrelenting if you don't slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, you need a couple breathing points.
Exactly. You need a little bit to breathe to build up to the final act. And that final sequence, you've seen it in the trailer of him running across the battlefield, and he's trying to find a Cumberbatch, the general commander or whatever, and they're like, oh, he's 500 yards that way. You're going to have to wait till this wave goes out. And he's like, nope. And so he doesn't go through the trench. He tries to run across, take a shortcut, essentially.
Yeah. And
man, that whole thing, he runs into two guys, which wasn't supposed to happen, and you can tell. Yeah. And one of the guys actually stays down because he probably freaked out and was like, do I stay down? Do I get up and keep running? And so basically, our main character killed a guy when he was running across the thing.
The actor had said that during that sequence, at least two people just straight up tackled him like football practice. But he was like, guys. But he was like, these takes that we're doing are all 9 minutes long, and there's literally millions of dollars being spent every second. So he's like, you just get up and you just keep going. You don't stop the take.
There's a great shot of in that little video in the show notes about of Sam Mendes on the front of the truck with a walkie-talkie, and the truck is driving as he's guys running towards the truck, and he's giving them directions, But they said they only had 3 chances to do that because of the amount of pyrotechnics that were involved, because things are blowing up in the background the whole time. But so some really subtle CG used in that scene too, because the truck's actually driving on a road. And so they took out the road. They digitally, basically had to erase the road with grass, and the meticulous nature of that is insane as well. Like to take all those soldiers out, replace the grass, put all the soldiers back in to make it look natural like that is something to behold too. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one maybe sneaks in a visual effects Oscar as well, you know, and a best original score Oscar, because this score is gorgeous too. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thomas Newman, man, he always brings his A game.
Ooh, man.
Well, there's a ton of visual effects in here that you don't even realize are visual effects. I mean,
I think one of the rats is CG. You know?
Oh, is it? I didn't know that. That's
I think it's a combination of real rat and CG. I think it's a real rat when it like first comes down and he's like, "Oh my gosh, a rat!" and then it crawls back up, and then when it's going across the like top of the room and he's following it with his light, you know, as it's like going across. I think that's the CG one.
I suppose that makes sense. I've never attempted to do it myself, but I imagine directing rats is a fairly challenging task.
We have a listener. Who do you remember?
Crosstown Exotics. I can't remember
his first name right now, but that's what he does. He does animal handling for
we should find out if he worked on this.
Was it our Rampage episode, maybe?
Captive State. Remember that?
Captive State, yeah.
I was going to say, interesting, Ken. I did not know that giant gorilla was real. So,
yeah. It took a long time to raise him. You know, they started shooting that movie 40 years ago. It's quite an achievement.
Well, and
you know,
most impressively, right? That sequence at night with the flares that we were talking about earlier, when he gets to that giant burning church, that whole thing is an effect. There was no church there. It was this massive lighting rig that Roger Deakins built. He said it was the biggest lighting rig he's ever physically built. And it was just this massive, building-shaped thing that had lights around all four sides and then lights on the roof as well. And you can see it in some of the behind-the-scenes featurettes, videos and shots like that. But it was not a church at all that was on, and certainly it wasn't on fire. That was all done in CG after the fact. But you'd never know. It was just that good of CG that you'd never realize, you'd never realize is not there. It's fake.
Yeah, it reminded me of the final sequence, the Home Alone sequence of Skyfall, where they set the house on fire and that's a very Deakins moment too, you know, where it's all lit by fire and Bardem's like chasing Daniel Craig in the field or whatever. Yeah, that reminded me a lot of that and how it looked. But like I said, man, this is a Deakins sizzle reel, an absolute clinic in directing, and Mendes should probably win Best Director for this, but the competition is so stiff this year. There's just absolutely like timeless films we're going to be talking about for decades nominated this year. So it's one of those years that makes you proud to be a part of, and I certainly, when I saw 1917, I certainly said, immediately when it was over, I said, yep, that should probably win every award it's nominated for, and I will have zero problem with it because it's an absolute clinic. Same with Parasite, too. If either one of those wins any award, I'm going to just say, yep. Can't argue there,
Absolutely.
I mean, certainly, they weren't showy performances. I think there were a lot of performances that were probably bigger and probably a little bit better. But I mean, I do want to mention absolute, props to Dean Charles Chapman and George McKay. I thought they were excellent in this film. I thought casting relatively unknown people was the absolute right way to go for this. Sam said that he cast them both because they both had kind of old-timey looking faces, and I agree with that. And I think they did a great job. I no criticism at all on any of the performances in this movie.
I think you're right on about the no names, because as good as Dunkirk was, when Harry Styles pops up, it's like, what? Okay, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, imagine if you would have had, not like a pop star, but imagine if you would have just had two, kind of hot younger act, like a Timothy Chalamet or something in this movie.
Taron Egerton or something,
It would be super distracting because they're like celebrities. So, so those guys definitely deserve to get a shout out because I thought they did absolutely fantastic in the film.
And kind of a thankless job too, because this movie is not about the acting like at all. And
correct, you're absolutely right.
And so they just have to go out there and do. And yet, if the acting is poor, then we're gonna sit here and be like, yeah, this movie's really well made, but these guys suck, So it's kind of a tough spot to be in, and they both did very well with it, I think.
100%, man. 100%, and the snipe sequence was cool too, where he's getting like sniped at, and he's got to take the guy off the tower, and he's like ducking behind the stairs.
Yeah, and cool narrative MacGuffin there too, kind of to have, because when you realize, even if you didn't know going in, oh, this movie's made to look like it's one continuous shot and all this, you're kind of thinking on the timeline of like, okay, how is this going to work? Because I know they got to get all this way, and there's morning to come. There's the hours and such, and then to have him black out there, and you have that one cut. I thought, I was like, that's smart. That's a creative way to do that. To get some time passage and put him kind of on a clock, really, as he gets to the end of this.
Just upping the stakes. That's what good screenwriting
absolutely.
does, and it was done very well here. So.
It's a little odd to me that this was nominated for an Oscar, not because it's for the screenplay, not because it's not a very good screenplay, just because I think there were a ton of great.
It feels like it's a 40-page screenplay though.
It's a little bit. So I'm like, I credit Mendes and who is the other writer that's in on this? Sorry, I've forgotten. But anyway, deserves a lot of credit for putting this whole thing together. It's very, very well written. It's a little bit different than what I would expect from a top 5 screenplay of the year, when in a year that is so stacked with great films. Christy Wilson Carnes, by the way, was the other writer on this. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I agree and I disagree. I feel like if you were to put more, this was. I agree, Brian. This is probably, it feels like a 40-page screenplay, but at the same time, I think if you were to stuff it full with all sorts of alternate subplots and all sorts of things like that it just wouldn't have been nearly as effective.
Yeah, no, for sure. Maybe the certainly as far as the scripting goes, the biggest plus for me, or the best thing that I would credit, is not overdoing it and not getting too cute with it and not trying to force in 6 subplots and all this sort of stuff. And it because it is just, it's pretty much you start and you go. And there's you mentioned a couple little breaks, Kent, and that's fine, just to let the audience kind of ease back up a little bit before they throw these guys right back into the fire. But you could very easily see the script like pack 30 minutes of one of them talking about his wife back home, and one of them, really falling for the French girl, and all this kind of thing that just would really kind of bog this down, and they avoided all of those pitfalls and those little traps and stuff. And I think that's that's very effective and makes the movie work. It's also a funny movie too. There's enough little throwaway lines and jokes and very British witty humor and stuff, and I think that helps a lot too, because you don't feel like that this is an unrelenting slog to get to the end of this whole thing. You know what I mean? Saving Private Ryan does that well too. There's the company of men and the interactions that they have back and forth between each other, between harrowing scenes of death and destruction and stuff, is very helpful and effective when you're watching that movie, because it gives you just a half second to get a little breath in and stuff. And this movie does that very well too.
Absolutely. Like immediately after the other main character dies, like the next thing you get basically right after that happens is the convoy pulls up, and you've got that kind of old curmudgeon-y general, and he's yelling at all the soldiers to move the tree out of the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not that it's hysterically funny, but it's enough to just let you breathe for a moment before you kind of get back to the mission.
Yeah. Great usage of Mark Strong too. I love
Mark Strong.
I love Mark Strong as character actor. Mark Strong. I get beaten quickly with Mark Strong as our third or fourth lead. It just I really like him in that setting. And when you don't see his face when he shows up, you just hear his voice and see his boots, and I was like, oh, that's Mark Strong. And he was really good. And he's only in the movie for 5 minutes, but I love that usage of him. I think it's really fun, and he's just very good at it and fits that model really well.
I think Mark Strong is in that same category, at least to me, as somebody like John Goodman, where they have been in a number of really crummy movies.
Sure.
But they themselves have never been crummy in a movie, right? Like, even, like, take a movie like Green Lantern, which is decidedly not a great film. Mark Strong is really good as Sinestro. It's just unfortunate that it was a crummy movie, but he's always a pleasure when he shows up on screen in any capacity. I'm a big fan. I like his work, so.
Yeah, I know. I can't say I disagree there. Love me some Mark Strong. Wanted him to play Steve Jobs in the Steve Jobs movie. I thought he would have done.
Yeah, but Kuchar did
it.
a great job, so you can't take that. I mean,
yeah, I love me some Fassbender. But a couple more notes I wanted to point out. The difference between Saving Private Ryan and this, I mean, Spielberg went the complete opposite direction when it came to how he shot the movie. I mean, this movie is on a steady cam, it's smoothed out. It's sweeping, right? He didn't even put the camera on the tripod in Saving Private Ryan, it was all handy, like basically shoulder cam, like as if you yourself are walking through this and getting knocked down by bullet fire and things like that. It's just a very different way to approach this. And I guess this is the most definitive way to see the difference between those two styles, the vast contrast of the approach. And that's something to be appreciated, I think, because it's easy to take a movie like that and to just carbon copy it, and do a different story and have people love it, So I appreciate Sam Mendes for going about it a different direction. And all that. So one more thing I wanted to touch on is the end with Benedict Cumberbatch. And when he actually reaches him and calls off the plan or the attack, and he says, okay, yeah, they call off the attack, right? And, he goes into his little bunker with our main character and it's like, this attack was called off, but next week I'm going to get another message that says the attack's on, so like it's just the inevitability of war is really emphasized there. And that hit home too. And he just basically says, all right, kid, F off at the end, like your job here is done. Go be in the war, and go get yourself cleaned up and we'll see you out there. It's amazing the sacrifice and it's sad the inevitability of war, but I think this movie touches on it very well. But any thoughts on the end? Any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We kind of mentioned it earlier, but I absolutely love the sequence when right before he gets to Benedict Cumberbatch, where he just decides to hop out of the trench and just start running at full speed down the battlefield, because it is quite literally that's exactly how you feel in that moment, where you're close to the end and you're just desperate to finish the job at hand. And I just felt like emotionally that's where we were in the story too. And I just thought, almost every choice in this movie was absolutely unassailable, and it was great. I totally agree, dude. And then after he's done with Benedict Cumberbatch and you've got that kind of scene, then he goes back to Richard Madden.
Richard Madden was really good brother too, by the way. Nice.
He's really
that
great.
Dude's really good. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Shane.
No, go ahead. No, it's fine.
He pops up in he makes interesting choices as an actor too. Like, it's not fully there yet, I don't think, but that's somebody that I can look at and say, and in 5 years we're going to see that dude. That dude's going to do something huge, and because he just
did. I thought I read something today that he's just
in an
signed
Amazon
on to be the lead
series that's coming out that looks. He does. I mean, he was in that. What is that show on Netflix? That was a British show that I recommended last year. I loved him in it. I thought it was really good. Now I can't remember the title.
I thought for half a second you were going to say, what was that show?
Oh, right, Game of Thrones.
It's called Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Tommen, by the way, that was the kid who dies early. That's. Charles, he's
Bodyguard.
Tommen, the Bodyguard. There he goes. Thank you. Yeah, so 2 Game of Thrones folks in this one, but yeah. Anyway, sorry. Richard Madden, really good. Going to go places, I think.
Yeah, he's in the Eternals this year.
Yeah.
I think he'll be fine.
Sure. Yeah, he's gonna win out.
He'll be fine. Yeah,
he'll be super jacked, I'm sure.
Buy stock on Richard Madden now.
Right.
Get that stock money in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was great in this. Also, Colin Firth in a small role too, very effective.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
And no Clive Owen.
Yeah, I thought that was really smart. Is if you're going to get celebrities, pepper them in.
Great way to do it. Absolutely.
Short sequences. Yeah, I forget who played the general, the old cantankerous general that was yelling at the soldiers to get them out of the trees. But Mendes did tell a funny story that it was somebody kind of famous or somebody he respected, so he had to like ask them very humbly to come out and be on the set for the day and play this role. And the actor, he said, like, was really confused and a little angry at the beginning because he's an old school actor.
Oh, it's Richard McCabe?
Oh, yeah, that's who it is. And he kept saying, like, where's the camera?
Because he's only a theater actor, it says, yeah.
Yeah, and so he never knew where the camera was because of the way they were shooting this movie in a weird way. He was just like, I have no idea what's happening. Like, am I acting? Am I not? Am I just hanging out? Like,
that's great.
But anyways, so but it was a super smart choice. If you're going to get big names, just sprinkle them in here and there.
100% agree. So I think that about wraps it up. I'm ready to grade this one out. Are you guys?
Yeah.
Let's do it. I'm going to give 1917 an A+, man. As much as I wanted this to be a little bit more, I can't deny what it is, and it's incredible. So A+ for me. What about you, Shane?
I would say absolutely agree. A+. I don't know exactly what every choice in this movie felt like the right choice, and I don't know exactly what you could more want from this type of movie. So yeah, for sure. A+.
I'll go just slightly lower and say it's an A. There were just so many good movies this year that I'm kind of by nature comparing it to and stuff. And I still have this slight hesitation of like, am I gonna really care about this as a movie in 5 or 10 years? I'm not, and I don't know the answer to that. Shane, I'm and then there's lots of people that are like this, but I think I thought about that when I made my top 10 list. That'll when we do Kent and Rich and I are going to do an episode. Shane, your top 10 of the decade list is coming out on the website next week. When I was making that list, one of the movies I thought about was Boyhood, and I had to think that through really hard. Of do I think this movie is a really good to great movie, or was it just the experience? And I do. I think it's a great movie. In addition to the way that it was shot and the experience of it and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure this is also going to be a very, very good movie. I just don't know that I'm not totally convinced that in 5 or 10 years I'm going to think of it in the same terms that I am 2 days after I saw it, if that makes sense. So for me, it's just it's a slight bump. But it's for sure. I have my top 11 for the year, sort of. Ken, I don't know if you've thought this stuff through yet. I think I have my top 11. I'm not totally sure what's going to fall. I don't totally know the order yet, and I'm not sure 7 through 11, like which one's going to get dropped from the top 10 and which one's not. So anyway, that's kind of my thinking on it. But a very, very strong A, and a movie that everyone should go out and see in the theaters.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I've seen a preview of Brian's top 10 list, and I will say bold choice putting Cats as 1 through 9. Literally just listing it.
Megan hacked
breaking
me,
the rules
and
a little bit.
I still haven't figured out how to get back control of my computer. But
I'm looking at my current top 10, and I gotta say, man, looking at this year, I feel like every one of these in the top 10 we're gonna be talking about in
it's a great
20 years. I really do feel like that. It does not feel in the moment at all. It feels like we got some classics on our hand, and that's a great feeling.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this movie really kind of, I'm not going to say came out of nowhere, but I will say, like, in hindsight, wow, what a year we had with movies. I mean, there were just some great films throughout really the entire year. But yeah, with it's going to be a tough Oscar year because there were really a lot of great films that were nominated.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, that being said, check out our Parasite episode this coming Thursday. And watch Parasite in the next day or two if you have not seen it yet. We definitely would suggest seeing that one before listening to the episode because it can be very spoilery very fast. And might win Best Picture, so you probably need to see it anyway.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Batman Shane, for being here. I know you're not really on the socials, but if you're in the Discord, he's Batman Shane in the Discord, and you can interact with him all day, every day. And it's great.
Absolutely.
It's great.
I'm in there, man. It's a fun time. You guys need to sign up and join.
Yeah, it is.
We have a blast.
Yeah, it is good. So, find him there. Brian, where can we find you?
You can find me on the Twitter, bgill12. You can find my writing at madaboutmoviespodcast.com, where I will have a top 10 of the decade of sorts. I'm going to save my official list for the episode that we're going to do, Kent, you, me, and Arby. So I'll save my list for that, but I have some other... some of the process of listing this out that's going to come out. And then Shane's list comes out next week, and I think we'll have 7 or 8 parts of this by the time it's done, 7 or 8 different contributors. And it's been really fun to read those lists and all this sort of stuff. So check out the blog, madaboutmoviespodcast.com.
I thought for half a second you were saying my list was 7 to 8 parts. I was like, dude, what document did you get? I did not.
Yeah.
I didn't read a novel. It was like 3 pages.
Yeah. Yeah, just on that note, on the All Decade episode, we'll be doing that for our 600th episode, where we're talking about our favorite movies of the decade. But Brian, any indication whether a movie from 2019 will make the list?
For me, no. But I've got 3 movies for me, top. I very, very much tried to blend best and favorite. And rewatchability is a huge part of favorite for me. So I have, if I remember correctly, I have 3 movies from 2019 in my top 25, somewhere between like 11 and 25, something in that stretch. But my top 10, I don't currently, and I get a little more time to think about that, Shane, than you guys did. I put you guys on a deadline. I was like, I need it by this time and whatnot. I get a little more time to think about it because we're not ready for the episode yet. So it's always a little bit, it's subject to change, but in some ways the 2019 movies are at a disadvantage because of recency, the opposite of recency bias, I guess, of like, I haven't had time to really rewatch too many of those movies. And is that going to be something that lasts for me forever? Am I going to rewatch, Ford versus Ferrari or Parasite or any of these 500 times like I have some of the other movies of this decade or not, you know? So, but at the moment, I don't have any from this year in my top 10.
Gotcha. Well, that's a good teaser, and we hope you will join us up until then when we release our 600th episode here in the next few weeks. We're also releasing our top 10 of 2019 episode, best and worst. We'll do a complete recap of the year and officially move into 2020. So stay tuned for that and our Oscars post-game show, where I'm sure we'll talk about 1917 a little bit more when Arby is here. Until then, you can find me at Mad About Movies and find our show at madaboutmoviespodcast.com and the VIP Club for more fun. So until then, until next time, we'll talk Parasite and maybe some Bad Boys for Life. We'll see you at the cinema.
Hey,
Bye.
baby, I hear the blues are calling. Toss salads and scrambled eggs. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Scrambled eggs all over my face.